right, episode 75. Today we're going to talk about why 87% of real estate agents fail and how you can avoid this from happening. We're going to go ahead and get started right now.
Welcome to the only real estate podcast worth listening to, with your hosts Nick Good, Matt Kelderman, and Brian Force. Combined, they have 26 years of experience and have sold over 1,500 homes. Join them each week as they bring you everything you need to know about real estate. And now, here are your hosts, Nick, Matt, and Brian.
All right, episode 75. Today we're talking about why 87% of real estate agents fail in this business and how you can avoid this from happening.
We're playing a night game.
That's right. We got the lights turned out today. But before we get started on all of this, if this is your first time listening, please go over to our iTunes page, the only real estate podcast worth listening to. Subscribe, leave us a review, as well as go to our Facebook group, the only real estate group worth being a part of. And if you're interested and you want to learn how to take more business, let's say more listings, right? Because that's what
For example,
because we're going to send you to that webinar that we've done on how to take 10 plus listings every single month, just like the Good Home Team does, just like DFW Hergenrother Group does, and you're going to learn it directly from us, right? Our tips, tricks, and secrets on how we're doing that. Go over to touracademy.com/take10, TEN, sign up for the webinar, and then you'll be prompted to sign up for Tour Academy for just $1.
So before we get started, I want to bring to everybody's attention that we had the opportunity to move some cameras around and stuff today. We're just kind of playing. We're playing. I'm going to tell you right now, we've said this a lot of times on the show, we're super not professionals when it comes to the production of these things. So you're going to see a lot of experiments kind of happen throughout the production of this, and so we're moving some cameras around. We gave Nick the opportunity to not have the camera facing directly into his eyeballs, and he's like, no. He's like, I want to look into the audience's soul. Don't you dare move me to some off-brand angle where they can't see my skull smoldering intensity. So this is his choice.
Well, it's working.
It's working for me.
Yeah. So let's talk about it. So if you're not in our Facebook group, the only real estate group worth being a part of, right? We had asked a question in there, and we always toss it around because look, a lot of us do very well in this business, and then there's people that we meet. They're like, man, that person's gonna kill it.
Sure.
Then a month later, they gone.
Womp.
Right? And so, the National Association of Realtor Statistics states that about 87% of real estate agents fail in their first 5 years. I saw another stat that says 75 plus percent fail in their first year. And I've seen another stat that says like 92% fail.
Yeah, I would tell you, I've used that 87% number a lot in conversations with people. I think it's right, but I would just tell you from personal experience, it's very high, right? Like, we can all agree. It seems like 8 or 9 out of 10 people in this business don't really last long term.
And then from there, the other, so 8 out of 10, right? The other 2.
Sure.
Out of that, they're really not making a lot of money.
I think what the average income for realtors is like now, depending on where you get this income, if you get it from Uncle Sam, it might be a little skewed, right? But I think it's like 50 or 60 grand a year or something like that. Does that sound?
47,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was being generous.
Yeah. And that's the average. So,
that's average.
So, I did see another stat that the average length of time that someone's been the median experience right now is 9 years, right?
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So, and so we asked in the only real estate group worth being a part of, what they thought that agents failed, right?
Yeah.
A lot of funny answers in there.
Sure.
But I took everything that our group members commented, and I threw it in one of those word grams or word clouds.
Yeah.
Right. And I wanted to see what would just pop up.
Sure.
And the main words that were popping up were lack or lacking.
Yeah.
Unrealistic. Then there's expectations, plan, and systems.
Okay.
Right. And so I was like, all right, why not? Let's do a show about why we truly think agents fail. How do you prevent
what's
that?
What's a word? Is that where you just throw in a bunch of data and it tells you like what is coming up a lot.
Is there a consistency? Is there a theme there? And then, have you not seen it? It's like you can shape it or whatever.
Bubble.
The word bubble.
Oh, it's like one of those lame ass like kindergarten things.
Yes, and then if there
Where
was
it's
more,
like
if there's
kindness.
mention of more than one
It's-
word,
Okay,
yeah,
so
mention of
it's-
more than one word, then that one will be larger and more in the center.
Okay,
Of the,
I know exactly what you're
word
talking
cloud.
about now. Okay.
I want to see if there was something cool that would come about of it, and you know, a lot of people talked about, you know, again, a lot of people were saying lazy.
Really?
Yeah.
I think
mean.
that's one of those things though. There's real estate agents. We just we encounter a lazy agent,
Sure.
and we all think that we're like the hardest working agents too.
Yeah.
So there's that, and so then we just like all the lazy agents. The ones
Yeah.
that it's like 1 out of every 10 transactions is some agent that I'm like, I never want to work with that
Yeah.
human being ever.
Yeah. I feel like it's like, oh, the lazy agents get out of the business. I'll see you at happy hour today at 5. Like, what are you talking about, man? I will tell you right now, I do not suffer from that syndrome. I will be the first to admit do not have so much hubris that I think I'm the hardest working agent in the business. I worked very hard to not have to be the hardest working
So let
agent
me
in the
ask you,
business,
so-
but I'm not gonna say I don't have my lazy moments.
But all right, so that's now. What did it
That's
look like in
different,
the
yeah.
beginning?
A lot of crying. Yeah. So it's funny that you say that, because the question that we're asking is, why do 87% of agents get out of the business? It's funny, the second that you sent me that text that like this is what we were going to talk about today, you guys didn't see what's going on. I just put together what you were doing. It's people in podcast. Nick's doing sex jokes, and I'm not picking up on them fast enough. Anyway, it's funny because the second I saw that text message that's what we were going to talk about today, in my head, I started to kind of meditate on it a little bit, and I was like, the real question is, why do 13% of people stay in this business? Because I just remember in the beginning, like, I wanted to quit every single day. And if you ask me why I still sell real estate for a living, I'm kind of like, it's the only thing I know really how to do at this level, right? Like, I'm not the best at anything in the world, and I'm definitely not the best at this, but I'm way better at this than most people, and I'm way better at it than I am at anything else. And so that's why I still do it. And yeah, the money's great. But I will tell you in the beginning, I asked myself every day why I'm still doing this, you know? So it was, yes, I probably did consider myself at one time the hardest working agent, because I had to be.
Well, I mean, first of all, you say the money's great. The average income is $47,000.
I just meant why I'm still in the
Right,
business.
you
I
know.
don't. That's I understand
money's-
I understand how bougie that just came out, and I'm so sorry to the people judging me right now. I didn't mean it that way.
Right. I mean, I'm not doing this job for $47,000.
Sure.
But you know, in the beginning, I would say that, you know, I wrote down some things that you know, how to avoid this, right? Or what? First off, why do we think so? You know, lacking unrealistic expectations, plan systems was what was coming up in the only real estate group worth being a part of.
Are there any, like, because you took that, how big were these like, are there any specific, like, what are they lacking? Lacking what?
Well, so lacking, a lot of it's lacking experience,
Okay.
right? Or we can go back in the group and pull it up.
That's kind of what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
You guys keep talking. I want to pull up the actual thing.
Because so with that, I mean, you know, and what I like by this is with unrealistic expectations. How many times have we met somebody who just got into this business who wants to make $100,000
Every time.
Every single person
and
that gets
6
into
to
this
12
business, I feel
months,
like.
Yeah.
right? Or unrealistic expectations, or lacking of a plan on how to execute. Right?
Yeah.
They're coming in here and they're like, "Well, I like looking at houses," and I had a poor experience with my real estate agent, and from that, I know I can do a better job than they can, and they're
Yeah.
obviously making $1 million.
I have heard that one a lot, where they're like, my agent sucked, so I felt like I had a responsibility or something
We
like
got
to
somebody
get.
on our team who's actually
Yeah.
crushing it. Who that's how she.
And then
got
yeah,
into
and she
it, right?
kills it.
I think there's a lot of people like that. I don't know, man. I do find it interesting how many times that I hear people, and Brian and I don't do as many interviews of new agents as we did when we first partnered up. And,
Sure.
But it was across the board. You hear $100,000, and then I'm not super good with the words, but the way they would like approach the whole thought process around like how easy it was going to be to get to that.
Well, how many times have you heard this, either in interviews or like you and me when we were in leadership, like talking to new agents, like, you know, we talk about money and goals and like what would, you know, make a great first year. Like, well, you know, I just want to sell like a couple a month or whatever. And I'm like, that's fantastic.
Sure.
It's still like, that's a lot.
Well,
in the beginning.
And some of that comes in, and we talk about the unrealistic expectations being part of the reason people get out. It's also then an oversimplification of the process, because what every brokerage, I think, does poorly is they have to train to the masses, right? And that's just inevitable. And the reality is the bulk training is a great idea to get you started.
Sure.
But legitimately 5 steps out of the gate, you are on your own. So, right? Creatively,
And I'm reading the comments. That seems to be where that word lack comes up a lot.
Single comment from that thing, but that's exactly what it feels like. Is just as soon you come out with so much energy, but then the reality of the grind part of it, most people just don't have any stomach for.
Sure.
And one person in here put choosing the wrong brokerage personally.
Sure.
Right. And what you bring up the brokerage training, and how I always explain it to agents is, look, every brokerage is serving at their cafeteria only one food, and it's mashed potatoes, right? But maybe this brokerage over here puts extra butter in theirs, and this brokerage over here puts a lot of pepper in it, right?
Now I get it. That was such a weird analogy to begin with, but you nailed it at the end there.
It's the same thing.
Okay, yeah, it's the same.
It's the same thing, and it's not designed to help agents truly, right? Because they have to serve to the masses. Because look, 87% failure rate. What is the brokerage business? What is the brokerage business really about? It's
recruiting.
About they got to play to the middle,
bringing people in, and then they're just going through the cycle and seeing, and then throwing it at the wall and seeing who's going to be left over.
I will tell you, and you will understand this as well from being in coaching and in me being in leadership and getting a real close working relationship with kind of how the back office of a brokerage works. You're not going to get if your career is contingent upon you getting a lot of support from your brokerage, you're putting your eggs in the wrong basket. Any brokerage.
Yeah, and here's the thing, and this is something that I've had to learn, and now what I always educate our agents and our team members on, and anybody that's partnering with us, is that the support is only as good as what you want out of it, right?
Sure.
So if you're, let's say coming to this office, there's a lot of agents in this office, and while we were here, the number one thing that we would hear when people were to leave is that, there was no support, we felt like a number, and that's at many brokerages. Was like, what did you do to reach out? Well, nothing. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot of that where people are coming in because they also want to be that entrepreneurial business owner. And they're like, well, I'm not reaching out to me. I'm going to go figure this out.
Exactly.
Or I'm going to try to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
I will tell you the agents, and I'm experiencing this with something in a completely different area of my life right now, but the agents who have success are the ones who are willing to reach out for help, right? The ones who just I went to all the trainings and then sit down with, my lead sucked or whatever. I would just tell you that if you found yourself doing that, you don't have the right mindset. And it's not that you need to know it all, but you need to consistent. If your broker doesn't pick up the phone, call somebody else. If they don't pick up the phone, call somebody else. Yeah. Keep calling people until you get an answer to your problem, instead of sitting there potentially for stuff I like you do 2 or 3 days and not really get a proper response for your client. And now the client's pissed, you lose that opportunity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It snowballs into so much other crap. And I just think you have to continue to search for the answer. If you've ever just sat down and been like, nobody's helping me, they're not gonna.
The mindset thing you said is huge, and I feel like a lot of this conversation is gonna come back to mindset in one way or another. But having that right mindset around training and things like that, right? Like I will tell you that one of the main differences I think between really, really highly successful agents and those that maybe are stuck in the middle, or even those that fail out of the business, are those that probably don't succeed at the level that they want. A lot of times, I have noticed they come into training looking for a secret. Looking for the next shiny toy, right? Echo. Looking for, looking for the thing that's going to make their life and their business and their career easier and more successful. And I think the people that end up succeeding over time, they just accept that this shit's going to be really hard for a while, and they're going into training with a mindset of, where do I best spend my time? If this is going to be really hard, where do I best spend my time?
But then they still search for that shiny magic
Well, we
pill.
do, but here's the thing, that also never ends, like you and I mean, we talk about this all the time. I'm always like, Nick, what are you guys doing lead-wise right now? Like, I've asked the same shit for a decade, even though we still sell, quite a few more houses than we used to, but I have that mindset of this is going to be messy and hard forever. Like we're on pace to do a lot of real estate this year. You know how messy some of our stuff was in our business and how hard we were working to just clean stuff up every day and make it better.
That's what they say. How many homes did you sell this year? A lot.
A lot.
Oh, okay.
Okay. A bunch. More than last year.
Yeah. So they brought.
Hold on. Okay.
All right, that was pausing for our sponsor there. So we started to incorporate that in last week. So if you didn't listen last week, go tune into episode 74 where we talk about our 15-minute pauses there. But the lacking word that came up in the word cloud, it was lacking consistency or lacking in training, right? Because a lot of people, they don't want to go to training. They don't, or you got people who overly go to education,
only go to
training, and they don't implement. So there's a little bit of both in there, and then lacking of that consistency.
Yeah.
Right. And I wrote down some things on how to avoid this. Right. So some things that came up is, people were lacking good habits or they had a bad work habit.
Sure.
They got into this business not to feel that they had to punch in a time clock and punch out. Right. So they have this now they're outside of the corporate walls.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden they feel like they're just on vacation.
Yeah.
And they're not working the same.
Well, that's a bit. I mean, when you
before.
ask people, how'd you get into real estate? Well, to control my own hours. I want to set my own hours. You're like, fucking set your own hours for who, dude? Like, try that early on in your career and see how it goes. Like, yeah, you're right. And I think a lot of the things that you're saying boil down to, if I had to sort of sum up, one of the things that I think gets people out of the business is people are really adverse to doing the hardest stuff that would make their lives easier. Meaning, like, we go to trainings all the time, but some people only go to trainings, right? When all they really need to do is just pick up the phone and call those old friends from high school and reignite those relationships. And I'll be the first to tell you I was guilty of it. I took the scenic route to any sort of level of marginal success in this business, right? I did not do things the right way at the beginning. The only thing I had going for me was a lot of resilience and the fact that I didn't know how to do anything else.
But hold on, before you jump into that back, because I know you wanted to jump on something, but there's no true right way. That's the problem.
Yes.
When we say, like, oh, you didn't do things the right way, now people start searching for a right way. Like, in all reality, I didn't build it the right way either.
Yeah.
If you go look at it, because I didn't, again, I talked about my story before, 24 years old, they're not buying from me. My friends weren't because they couldn't afford it. My friends' parents weren't.
Same.
Right? And so, we had to learn the cold lead generation model. And, a lot of the mashed potato style training talks about reach out to your sphere.
Yep.
Right? Well, that wouldn't work for me. I would no longer be in this business if I followed that system and model.
I think you're 100% right. I agree with my situation probably as well.
Yeah.
Being pretty young getting into the business.
I can assure you that there's no way that if I had the ability to go back in time and do it the exact same way again, I probably would not have been able to stick with it, right? Part of it was just I was cluelessly walking into a brick wall for a little bit until I got good enough to figure out some things were a little bit easier and then afford some leverage and whatever. But I agree with you. That was my biggest hang up at the beginning was I kept trying to do it the way I was being taught or the way that I had heard people do it, right? And it wasn't working for me, not because it didn't work for me. I just didn't have the right mindset around it. I was going into it with a negative thought process, like, I can't do this. Brian's got up in front of the whole office before and done like a script thing. Bro, even to this day, if you put me in that situation, I would piss myself. I do not want to be put on the spot with like, there's a more right answer than a wrong answer, right? Because I feel like that's just not how I work in conversation. But tripping and falling through the way I did got me to where I'm at now, and now it's completely different because now I feel like there's no business I couldn't really take, and I didn't really pay attention how I got there. I just ended up there, right? I could never replicate however I finished out or got. At least you guys have that ability to go in there and say, here's at least a roadmap. I'm kind of like, I don't really know.
But you do have a roadmap because you failed your way forward. And,
Sure.
that's something that, again, where most people need to understand and we're still failing our way forward and trying to see, all right, does this thing work? It doesn't? All right, well, I'm going to shut this down. Let's start this. And just like we talk about it, we using the baseball analogy, you can be a Hall of Fame player by batting 300.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? That means 3 out of 10 times you're getting a hit and on base, and those other 7 times you either strike out or you ground out or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? So you can fail a lot of times, and you've used that analogy on the show plenty of times that you can make 6 figures in this business by just batting 300.
I think that really goes back to one of probably the biggest words on your little word thing was expectations or whatever. That's probably one of the reasons I think that agents get out of the business is maybe no one, and maybe they shouldn't, maybe this is irresponsible, but no one sits them down at the beginning of their career and it's just like, everything good you've heard about real estate is on the other side of a lot of shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, no one has the audacity to be like, all the awesome things, whatever you see your prototypical, like, successful realtor with his Mercedes and his suits and all this stuff, like, either he's broke or that's on the other side of a whole lot of shit. And you're going to have to go through it to get there. And I feel like, maybe coming in with unrealistic expectations, and it's not like your broker is going to be realistic with you. They're going to pump everything up and be like, this is easy. You know what I mean? So I think that's maybe the number one thing is, like, people don't realize the tidal wave of just failure and disappointment that's going to hit them early on before they really start to build some traction.
Is that any different, though, than it would be in any entrepreneurial endeavor, though?
No.
And I think Elizabeth just commented something that I think is important, but we enter into any new experience. Every single time I start a new job, even when I worked for somebody else and was getting paid a set wage every single hour, I still entered into it with some nervousness of not really knowing what I was doing, right?
Yeah.
And I think the older we get, the more scared we get of being scared. So that fear of failure and stuff hits a lot harder when your ass is on the line and there's kids and things like that.
We become more avoidant of, like, tough situations.
100%. And I think that's where, like you were talking about, just Elizabeth used the word ignorance. I just think it's just maybe that's the perfect word.
Yeah.
But you just don't really know what you don't know yet, and then you get into it with this. Again, HGTV and Millionaire Real Estate Agent do a really good job of making it look like Frederick is making $400,000. As soon as somebody says they'll buy a house, and it's just not the way it goes at all, right? And so we get caught up in this idea that somehow there's vast amounts of money. I had a buddy I used to work with when I was bartending. One of the first deals he ever closed was like $800,000, right? That would have been the worst thing that could have happened to me. Just hand me like a $24,000 check out the gate.
Yeah.
Because then the little $150,000 and $200,000 deals that you do, that at the end of the day, your full boat commission is a quarter of that, right?
Yeah.
Like, not including when you start playing splits and all this other stuff,
Sure.
right? Like, all of a sudden, like, it would have been a lot harder for me to work to those deals. So I'm so glad that my career kind of unfolded lower and moved gradually up, because I think it gave me the proper perspective for how it should grow, as opposed to being like, psh, I'm going to make $25,000 out the box every time. Those don't happen too often.
Well, and Chauncey commented, on this original kind of survey, and the only real estate group worth being a part of. She said number one is employee versus business owner mindset, and a lot of people come into this and they're still not treating this like a business, right? They still have that their employee style hat on. Number two is lack of critical thinking skills. So I use that.
I fucking still have that. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah.
Well, I think that contributes to
that ain't a reason to fail, because I don't have them either.
I think that contributes at a high level to your ability to stay in the business too. The critical thinking, because that's something now that, like, is an asset for my clients that I'm still struggling to make them understand the value of just my ability to keep a deal together, as opposed to this guy who's either going to do it for less or hasn't been doing it as long or whatever, right?
Yeah, and that's the endurance on it. I know that Elizabeth, who's commented on here just now, like, her endurance to keep deals together is a lot higher than mine. Like, I see something I'm like, you know what? I probably would have folded that hand, right, and probably told the client to go find
That's one of my hardest challenges as a leader, is when some of our agents come to me with a problem. I'm like, you can email that person and you tell them this, and then 5 minutes later I'm like, don't send that, I'm so sorry.
The thing is, but there's a really great space to be, and I think I feel like I do this very well, and I think Elizabeth and I are probably pretty similar. It is very easy to have pointed. I don't get ran over very often by agents anymore, right? And it's not necessarily that I'm just a dick. Look, there's people who listen to this show that have unfriended me because they did deals with me, and they're like, that guy's an asshole, right? But at the same time, I didn't do anything wrong. I just held their feet to the fire on the contractual obligations that their clients agreed to. It wasn't like we were negotiating like jerks or whatever, right? And because I have that too. I don't like deals. We were talking about this before. I've got one now that it's a daisy chain, and we're waiting for another buy to close. We had a massively short appraisal, right? It's a referral from. There's all these things going on that you can't control, and I worked my ass off to kind of keep that deal together. Right. And I've had other ones like that. I don't turn them loose too often, right? At all.
I think. So Chauncey had said something about not running it like a business, and I think that's really true in the sense that. That's where you see a lot. Like, if you ever run across those people, like, we all have all these experiences maybe a couple times a year where you're just like, that dude's not selling real estate anymore? Like, I thought he was doing really well. Like, I feel like that's there's levels to this, obviously, right? Like, I can tell you right now, I wasn't running this like a business for a very long time because I didn't know how business worked, right? I was a bartender. Like, Matt was saying, you shouldn't have handed him a $24,000 check in his first year. Somebody handed me a $12,000 one, and that shit was gone pretty quick, right? So I wasn't running it like a business for a long time either. But that is where you start to see, like, maybe your $3 to $6 or $7 million producers that you're like, they make revenue, and then all of a sudden they're doing something else for a living, and you're like, why did they stop? And it's usually, that's one of the hardest transitions to make, I think, is like, I'm just trying to make money, I'm just trying to do deals, to like all of a sudden like, oh man, now I have like real expenses, real overhead, I'm trying to scale this thing, and like it can become all of a sudden, like in the blink of an eye, seem very overwhelming. Like it just can very much, like that ceiling you hit as far as like going from entrepreneurial to purposeful can seem almost impossible to break through. So I feel like a lot of people that were doing well, maybe that's one of the reasons they get out of the business, is because they're just not really business people, and they get really burnt out of doing the same stuff over and over.
That's the key. Because they're at $6 million, they're probably making, assuming charging whatever their commission they're charging, they're probably netting 90 to 100, just depending on their expenses.
Yeah.
But they start calculating the time, energy, and that just the emotional drain,
And you have deals that start to fall apart all the time. You have terrible clients every once in a while. It just wears you out, like you're saying. Yeah.
So number 3, I think this one is really, really key, and a lot of people, Chauncey says no sales ability, right? And I've seen people come in, and look, I'm guilty of saying this where I don't want to sound like a salesperson.
Yeah.
But let's be real. We're in the sales business, right? We need to learn how to sell ourselves and to sell the value that we're providing, because this is a service.
Yeah.
Right? And we all pretty much do very, very, very similar things, just with a little bit of a deviation here and there,
Sure.
right? That can make a difference. But you've got to learn how to sell yourself, even to your sphere, your network. So I agree on this is having, people who come in and like, look, I don't really want to be a salesperson, but I love real estate, and I'm going to be different because I'm not going to be that sales car salesman type mentality or image.
I think it comes in different forms, right? Because like I'll tell you that I think Kelderman and I are both what you would maybe consider good salespeople, but I don't feel like a salesman, and I know that he certainly doesn't. But like he's one of those dudes that just has a very natural charisma and a raw honesty about him that conveys a lot of trust and things like that. And then I don't have that at all, I don't think. In fact, I think my personality turns people off more than it turns them on, except for Lady. What's up? So stupid. Nice. But I was more like one of those kids that was always a really good test taker, but like a C+ student, like I could just cram it all the night before. So like I really do well in appointments because I could just kind of figure out what I need to, like what your pain points are probably going to be, and kind of figure out what I'm going to do like an hour before the appointment. But like when one of our agents asked me for help, and then we talk about it a half hour later, I'm like, you need to refresh my memory because I already forgot what the hell we were so like I think the sales skill just kind of comes in different forms. Maybe.
It does.
And I don't want anybody to not get in this industry because they think you have to be a salesperson. Again, if you're watching the show for the first time, Nick delivered pizza, Brian and I were bartenders, right? Like it wasn't like, I think what it is, and Chauncey has it, and I think she uses the word sales because that's the most comfortable word, but you've got to be, your ability to connect with people and explain to them kind of why you can solve their problems, that's what you're doing, right? If the word we're calling sales, that's the action behind it, at least for me.
Yeah, that's sort of an umbrella word, I think.
It is. Yeah. And I think, and again, some people do it salesy, right? They're very scripted. They are here is our stuff, whatever. You have other people like me who I'm walking around the house and I'm telling them how great of a job they did, keeping the house up, and I'm pumping them up and telling them this isn't nearly as bad as you said it was on the phone, right?
Yeah.
So it's a totally different conversation, but we're putting them at ease with their decision, with trusting you with the most expensive thing they own. And that sounds super cliche, but when you can kind of internalize that a little bit and make that what you're attempting to convey to them, not that what you're promising to do or anything, but you're just making them understand that they're making the right decision in that moment to hire you, that's, I think, where you've got something, especially on the listing side.
Yeah.
Right? Because the buyer side's a little bit of a different animal, and I think I'm very candidly, I think being a buyer's agent is a little bit easier. That's why most people default to it. And it's a place where you can connect a bit easier up front.
I kind of think that part's in the beginning just resilience, picking up buyers. Like buyers, will work with you more with less convincing than sellers, right? So I feel like that's just grinding it out.
Well, and agents like that better because it's typically a more pleasurable experience, right? Typically,
It's
right?
an easier lead to acquire, very
Sure.
honestly.
It's a cheaper cost to acquire for sure. But at the end of the day, that's what we're going to stop. We're going to pause for our sponsors.
He's so bad at doing that. I was just trying to give my heads up that, like, hey, when you finish this
Every
thought,
time, every time we have one of these things where Brian
we're
either
gonna-
pulls the curtain back and tells them exactly what we were just trying to hide, or like somebody signals something, the other person's like, what? Hey, what?
I didn't mean
there's
to
obviously
stop
zero
you
broadcast
down.
training in this
Yeah,
room.
I didn't
No.
mean to stop down in the middle of your sentence. I'm
So if
sorry.
this was a sales ability skill, we don't have that.
But anyway, yeah.
But
All right,
we've
but
been
here we
for
go.
75 episodes.
We'll pause for 2 seconds now. We'll be right back. All right, and we're back.
But that's what makes this show funny.
I love it.
At least
I
for me.
love it. I love the
At least
bits.
we have 3 listeners for sure.
There'll
Right?
always be 3 people
Yeah,
watching.
there's always 3 people watching this. But again, I'm going like in the beginning. Matt, you may not have been. Brian, I bet you have. You've studied sales skills. You probably have bought
Sure.
Mastery of sales skills
definitely
Yeah.
books.
Yeah.
You probably have watched stuff online. I know I have, and where like I even remember taking when renewing my license, I took I don't even remember the course name of it now, but it was for my continuing education that talked about when you should wear. When I would very rarely wear ties.
Yeah.
I had a black one and a gold one, right? Because it would the colors signify power.
Sure.
It's a kind of a power move on
Yeah.
certain things. So I had a gold one. I had a blue button down with a gold tie.
jacket, green jacket, who gives a shit?
I could just see Nick in an appointment, keep making eyes at his own tie, like just like suddenly you notice my tie color.
Right, but there has been studies about like what you wear, and
Yeah.
then of course I threw that out the book because I'm like I want to wear the same thing every day,
Sure.
right? That came later, but there still needs to be that understanding in sales and that the skill in that, and that they're studying on that because there are people who just aren't naturally strong at connecting with people.
Yeah.
You, Matt, you're really really good at that, and so that is truly a sales skill that you need to be able to relate. You
I
need
could
to be-
hone that though. There is a part where it's like, again, this is kind of the thing with, and I'm not comparing myself to a professional athlete, but if you have an above average gift at something, you can also hone that by
Sure.
putting some actual technical skill to it, right?
Oh, yeah.
If you can go out and crush the high and inside fastball, you could also probably behoove yourself to figure out a way to slap that low and away one into
Yeah.
right field too, right?
Exactly.
And that's the thing that I do. Wouldn't say I'm disappointed in myself. That is a place where I could level up. Is actually putting some real rigid structure around some of the natural stuff that I do well.
Yeah, 100%.
And a lot of these people talk about, a lot of the comments here in the Only Real Estate Group worth being a part of was, most newbies, this was from Gregory Knapp, most newbies have an unrealistic opinion of the business perpetuated by most brokers, right? And again, you
Yeah,
talked
it's
about it,
kinda, yeah.
the brokerage business could be at fault for this, for being the hype person, be like, you can make,
Yeah.
Yeah, they always got a water bottle and a towel in the background.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, right. And if you
Exactly.
just take this one more training, if you go to this, on average, the people that graduate from this training sell 4 more houses during this training.
That is a bit that they do. I will tell you in the background, as I've seen the dark underbelly, they do inflate those numbers by getting certain people who probably don't need that training to come, just so they can say that the averages are a certain way. Not pointing any fingers or naming any names. I just say I feel like that's an industry-wide thing. But you're right. And look, when we say it's the brokerage's fault, what is the brokerage supposed to do? You know what I mean?
No.
Tell you that, hey, we have a 35% churn rate at our brokerage every year.
I don't know if
Because
anybody
most brokerages do, But yeah, I think that's part of it.
And we probably didn't think to look up this stat, but this might be a good one to understand. Is like how many people in the United States every year go all the way through with the licensing process, not just start classes, not just get to the point where they get fingerprinted, like legitimately get licensed every year. That number right there is probably insanely telling on how the brokers have to run their business, right? It has to be, and this is by no means a pitch to teams to join teams. We happen to run teams and all be on teams, but the reality is that is why when you join a team, you typically have more success, right?
Yeah.
Like, why would an agent like myself, who was moving 3 units a month, which isn't a ton, but it was definitely enough,
Sure.
and would be willing to change their split in order to join a team, right? Because that's what we're always worried about. And the reality of it is, it's because I make way freaking more money in way less time, and that is, I struggle with any agent who believes completely that doing it on their own is the most efficient way. I for a time it will be, but you will reach a point where your growth hits a huge ceiling because of that, right?
For a time, it will be because you need you don't want to go all in financially on your business in the beginning. You got to grind it out. 2, because you can't leverage everything out in the beginning because you don't know what the hell you're doing, right? It's not until you gain. Like, I'm a firm believer in I shouldn't say mastering. I'm a firm believer in knowing how to do something before you leverage it out, right? Otherwise, you have no accountability whatsoever. But, you hit the nail on the head. You don't even return your own email half the time anymore. That's because you're out doing productive things, I would hope.
But I think that's also telling about the broker situation. So, like, we see it in a lot of these groups, and if you're listening to this in any of those groups that we've shared this into or later or whatever, and you have the question of, like, how do I choose my brokerage? Here's the thing is, a little bit of it is just diving into the deep end and seeing how it works, because they're all going to look super bright and shiny up front. You know why? Because they're salespeople, right? Like, they know they know the value they're trying to convey to you, and they're trying to fill the holes. You need to go into an understanding of what you want out of this, and I know it's a hard question to answer, but I think at the very upfront part, and this helps the washout rate of agents in general, is really just having an understanding of what you're attempting to accomplish, realistic goals, right? And I'll tell you right now, a realistic goal for your first year in real estate, if you are in a market similar to DFW, California agents don't freaking comment on here, right? Like, I understand your price point's insane.
Yeah.
But, like, the reality is, if you're making $50,000 in your first year at real estate after you paid your splits and everything, that is an amazing.
That's good, man.
That means you probably really gross 75, 80.
That's super good.
Real number. And for those of you who have a job right now where you're making 6 figures and you're going to step back into understand, you may not make 6 figures in your first year, right? And I just think we need to come up with a little bit more realistic expectations and understanding what we want out of the process, so then we can make a proper brokerage selection. Because if you do start brokerage hopping, man, I'll tell you that every time I see an agent change in brokerage, I always look up their stats a bunch of times. Like, we were just talking about somebody before the show that we just saw somebody switch where they were at, and it makes you start thinking, right? If I'm a past client of an agent who I see change a brokerage every 18 months, I'm going to tell you right now, it looks like you're chasing your tail.
Yeah.
It just does. I don't know any reason why you should switch that.
If you're not getting traction anywhere,
only if you, there's the ones that who outly, who go out and promote it. Like, oh, I'm here now, right? I mean, I think there could be, if you were truly brokerage hopping and you kept it under wraps, because I talk to lenders about this all the time. I'm like, in the lending world, it's different, but I'm like, all right, if you were to leave around, mortgage lender hop, because they had better products.
There's different products,
but you didn't say, oh, Matt, you should use me because now I'm over at XYZ lending company. And then 6 months later, Matt, you should use this because it's better. You should just be like, tell people the truth. But, you're right. When people brokerage hop, they're searching for the brokerage to be that magic pill to help them get more business. Right. And in all reality, what you should be looking for is, all right, is it conducive for team environments? Because maybe you should join a team.
Sure.
By the way, that when I was preparing for this episode, that was one of the things that came up repeatedly was, how to avoid yourself from being the 87%, join a team.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't put it on here because that's not going to sit well. That's not a pill.
You want to get a pissing match in the comment section, you can always throw that out there.
Yeah, I mean, and look, I mean,
I think it makes sense for the majority of agents.
I'm going to tell you, a lot of my agents make more money than the individual agents, right? And
I would say most of ours do. Most of ours, I would think. The ones that are really producing for sure.
So with that, if you're searching for that, you need to look at a brokerage platform that allows you to grow into, right? It may be shoes that are too big right now, but does it give you room to grow? Because what you don't want to do is join something that you're like, I hear this all the time. I'm going to go here for a little bit. I'm going to take their training, and then I'm going to come join you. Or I'm going to join X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, it makes no sense.
You don't go YouTube?
That's right.
Like, if you're going there just for the training, just go to touracademy.com as well. It'll be fine.
Touracademy.com, but not on YouTube.
No. I'm just saying in general. I'm just saying that is a silly line of reasoning to me.
100%. Yeah. I mean, there are way too many times I hear that, and they're like, well, I'm going over here because I can't afford to be at X, Y, and Z brokerage. And I'm like,
yes. So here's what I will say. And again, I every once in a while, I will speak directly to the agents about some stuff that I think is stupid that I have heard. And that is the worst one. I'm telling you right now, if you are making the decision because it's cheaper. Now, if you are making the decision because it is more profitable for your business, that is a different decision than if your mindset is it is cheaper over here.
Yeah.
And I think that's hugely important, because the type of person who makes a business decision, and I'll use you as a little bit as an example, somebody who makes a brokerage change decision for the profitability of the business and overall what they're trying to do is completely different than the most likely an individual agent who is going to a brokerage strictly because it is cheaper. If you find yourself going along that thought process, you are dangerously close to making your last decision as a licensed real estate agent.
I can tell you, no one comes to mind that I personally know that has ever made that move, that is selling enough real estate or making ideal money, which would be more than $50,000.
I would actually challenge you to go find like mega agents at your local flat fee brokerage, like as compared to like, you know what I mean? Like it's probably not. But I think, just call it what it is. It's a scarcity mindset, and that's. If I had to like kind of put this in terms as far as like my experience and stuff, a lot of the people that I came up with in this business that are like maybe my age or like got into the business around the same time that I kind of knew, and like we did training together and stuff like that. I sort of think maybe one of the prominent things that gets people out of the business is we have this certain image of how, or a certain idea, this image of how things are going to be. And then when that's not there right away, we start to look for the next thing, right? Like we sort of like, look at us. Like, it's funny how you change over time, right? Like you guys known me for years. I used to be suited and booted every day. I needed the freaking $80,000 car. I needed all the stuff. Dude. And that's sort of, to be honest, I'll tell you, my first Ignite class with Keller Williams, they asked, why'd you get into this business? And I literally put down because I wanted to buy a Ferrari. I'm not kidding, dude. I was like a dumb 24-year-old, 23-year-old kid. Like I had no idea what I was talking about, right? And it's funny, like nowadays, at least on paper, we're much better off. But like, I don't really care about that stuff anymore. I care about like good people. I care about all this stuff. But I would say that this is not for everybody. But I would say at least younger realtors that sort of get into the business, I sort of see the trend that like if like massive success that you can't put on Instagram happens right away, you're like donezo pretty quick. You know what I mean? And like what I'm trying to say is that there's a lot that goes into this journey, and some of it's business and a lot of it's personal growth. And I just saw on our Facebook Live that my dad's watching right now, and I would tell you that there was a time that I was literally in the parking lot of our freaking grocery store in DeSoto, Texas, listening to some crazy man talk about how he can't actually buy the house that I was trying to sell him for like $15 or whatever. It was terrible, right? It was not a good situation to be in. It was like the first buyer appointment I ever won. I was awful, right? I was so lost at that time. And I had to call him and ask to borrow rent money, and like that sucked. That sucked so bad. Everything that we had to go through, like back then, sucked so bad. And I know that's not for everybody, right? Some people get in there pretty successful right away. I was young, so I didn't have a big sphere, just like you, Nick. And like, I wanted all that shit too. And I, when I started to get successful, I did make those mistakes. I did go and buy the suits, and I did go and buy the car, and I did go and buy all that type of stuff. But like in the beginning, I think that's one of the reasons a lot of people get out of the business is like, if you knew my darkest secrets in my first few years of real estate, it was that everything was smoke and mirrors. I was broke as fuck behind the scenes and didn't pay any of my taxes and put my rent on credit cards and all that stuff.
But you got the points.
I have so many points now. You have no idea. Not as much as you, but yeah, I got the points. But yeah, it's just, if you're not prepared to do that type of stuff, it can really hit you with a serious dose of reality.
Now let's pause for our stations to identify themselves.
I was going to say station identification.
So I wrote down a couple of things just so how to avoid this, right? So, some things that were coming up. So lacking good habits, / bad work habit, right? So making sure that you're
that's a big one.
If you're working from home, right, where pretty much everyone is nowadays.
Yeah.
Walking in here, it seems like it's a ghost town, right? Yeah. And so making sure that learning how to work from home properly, and that's probably a big struggle for a lot of people. Like they're leaving a corporate world where they were going in the office.
Yeah.
Now they've got this time freedom. They're their own boss, holding themselves accountable, and they're like, I'm not going to lead gen, or I'm not going to, I'm going to start work, but I got to do dishes.
There's always something.
Yeah. And here's the thing with that. Understand that if you're failing at that, I'm not going to give you the pass of that being anybody else's fault.
No.
Like the work habits thing, at least that part of it, I'm not seeing all other stuff going on, but the work habits part of it, you make time. I think it was 2 episodes ago, because I just came back from Broken Bone, I was listening to about the lady who's like, would have said early in the week that she didn't have an extra 7 hours in her week to do anything extra, but then the water heater goes out and floods her whole house, and she manages to find 7 hours in that week to solve that problem, right? You are going to make time. If somebody tells you they'll pay you $100,000 to dust your house, you're going to dust your house, right?
Yes.
Like, you're going to figure
Exactly.
it out. So that excuse just doesn't work. You show me your calendar, and I'll show you what's important to you.
So that's
right?
number 2, poor time management.
Yes.
Right. And what that can fall into with that category is understanding, your dollar productive activities. Right. Time management, poor time management could be, well, I need to get my website up. I need to get my listing presentation, my buyer presentation, yada yada yada.
Yeah.
Stuff that is only warranted if you had clients.
If you
in the
have
first place.
appointments and clients,
Right. If you don't
yeah.
have appointments and clients, what does it matter if you have a website? Right? What does it matter if your presentation's intact and in order?
Mean
right?
anything to have a website no one goes to.
Yeah, dollar productive activities is lead genning, talking to your sphere, talking to people that know, like, and trust you.
Yeah.
Door knocking, cold calling, open houses, you name it.
Yeah.
Craigslisting.
We had somebody on our CEO call yesterday, Erin Bradley from Pursuing Freedom, and she said one line that really kind of struck me, that our brains are not meant to be storage units, they're processors, right? And this, when we walk around with this like to-do list in our head all the time, you are naturally going to forget stuff. Part of your morning routine or evening routine, whatever it is legitimately taking a notepad or a piece of paper and just brain dumping everything.
Yeah.
And I mean everything. Because you were talking about the website thing. I get so bogged down in this with all these to-dos that would kind of be nice if I got them done, but they're not really priorities in my life.
I used to use the to-do list app on my phone.
Yeah.
Guess how long it took me to get my passport
You deleted
renewed?
the app before you
18 months I couldn't leave the country because I didn't have a valid passport because I kept pushing it back.
just pushing it back. And I think if you just do, she called it a brain dump, but I think if you just add that to your daily regimen where you just write all this stuff down, one, it gets it out, it frees you up from having to try and remember that stuff, and you can organize that shit later. Most of it probably isn't stuff you need to deal with right now anyway.
So that can fall into having the right systems and the right tools, right? So, that's skipping a little bit ahead because I said not lead generating at all or not lead genning consistently,
Yeah.
but having the systems also to lead gen. So, if you're first getting in the business, write down, and I thought this was such baloney, right? So it was writing down everyone that you know and that you are going through your phones list and looking at, all right, do you have their contact information? Do you have their email? If not, go get their email.
Sure.
Go put them into, your database, whatever software, KV Core, Boomtown, etc. Put that in there and then start reaching out alphabetically and just updating contact and birthday and etc.
Sure.
And that can naturally lead into conversations. I didn't do that in the beginning.
Yeah, me neither.
And maybe out of my lack of thought or just how we've said it so many times, I was 24, my friends weren't buying.
Yeah.
Maybe if I still went down through that path, that
Sure.
I would have
100%, you would have found a couple of people.
Oh,
There's
definitely.
no way every person
couldn't
you
have
knew
hurt.
back then was like, Nick's the worst.
Exactly.
There's a couple of people who would have been
Like
like,
everybody's
I wanna help that dude
actively
out.
out there thinking like I would never do
Yeah,
business
there
with
are
him.
100% people on that list who would have been like, oh, that's sweet.
Yeah. I'm
Let's
happy,
throw Nick a
right?
bone.
I think that you mentioned something earlier that I want to come back to that again. I think harps again on the personal growth journey is like when we talk about, especially in the beginning, right? We talk about like time management and things like that. I think we short ourselves so much on the time management in the sense that like we think time management is like, and I had this conversation with the team the other day. We think time management is like time blocking stuff on our calendar and then just like doing it then, right? There's a lot of margin for error in that because like you can't dictate how your day is going to go all the time. To me, time management is knowing you need to get things done and just having the discipline to get them done no matter what else is going on in your life or day. And what I mean by that is like you're not always going to be able to stick to your time block calendar, right? But like my wife is a good example. We were coming home a few days ago and I had stuff that I needed to do. And she texted me, she's like, hey, everybody wants to get together and drink and play cornhole. And I was just like, tell them no. And like, and it seems very simple, right? And one of our coaches that we both go to has this thing he tells us all the time. He's like, why do you care when you disappoint people? You know what I mean? Like you disappoint people by doing something wrong. That's one thing. But like we have this thing where we're like, we got to say yes to dinner. We got to say yes to this. Got to say this to that. And like all the time, our one of our coaches, he's like, he's like, that's a you problem, man. If you feel like you've got to, like, he's like, stop worrying. So like, you have this burden in your mind where you're like, I'm going to let you down. Like, who cares? Let them be disappointed, you know? Say no to your friends if they want to do some shit that you can't do right now, you know? And I feel like there's so much time that we get back. If we can get our minds wrapped around, I've got to focus on this stuff no matter what else, and just start saying no to things and being okay with that.
The last one, setting unrealistic expectations or not setting expectations at all. So coming into this and you know, one, the unrealistic, I need to make 100,000 or bust, or you get discouraged.
I did the latter. I got discouraged and had no expectations. And just like,
right? But if you come in and can sit here and truly analyze, all right, you know, reverse engineer it,
Sure.
right? And that's where talking to either the brokerage, you know, the broker, the team leaders, your sponsors, whatever, and understanding, all right, what is truly realistic expectation, and if I'm not hitting that, what should I do to get on track, right? Because that can be someone who, again, we're using 100,000 as that example because that's what we hear most often. And let's say that 50,000 is normal, but they're only trending to do 25. Mm-hmm. Well, they're more than likely, they're probably inconsistent with their lead generation or not doing enough lead generation activities to get to that 50. Yeah. Right? If they go and willing to commit and they're disciplined enough with their consistency in lead gen, maybe they're looking at 75 to 100. Maybe they do hit 100.
Exactly.
Right? And it's coming out with that plan.
Yep.
And executing it on a day in and day out basis.
That's a big one, man. I think a lot of people, and it's tough, and that is where you really need to be kind of forward thinking and reaching out and having conversations and maybe getting out of your comfort zone and utilizing resources that maybe you weren't comfortable utilizing in other people and things like that. Because having no expectations, I think, is a big one. Just coming in and not really knowing what you want to accomplish, how you want to accomplish it, how hard it might be to accomplish the things that you want to do. But Matt and I tell people all the time, and rarely do they take advantage of it. We do live events. We did in the old world, live events every 2 weeks, and literally Matt would just write his and my cell phone number on the whiteboard in front of like 60 people and be like, call us on our cells. We'll have coffee with you if you ever want to talk about your business. Like,
how many people actually took advantage of
fucking 4 maybe?
One every class. I got to the point where I was telling them that. I was like, I'm going to write this up here, and I know only one of you is going to call me. And the one of you that actually make that choice, understand you are the only one who did it, because I do this every time, and just one person. Look, I'm not saying that I'm such a genius that you should take an hour out of your day to come have lunch with me, but I can imagine at the very least just the melding of minds and us kicking the ball back and forth. It's got to be valuable enough.
We're still cool guys, at least.
I'll pay.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not even going to make you take your credit card.
100%.
Hang out, bro.
And barely anyone did it. It's crazy.
That was something that you started doing because you know Michael Reese would do that and he would say the same thing. So it's not just an uncommon thing.
He knows the same thing we do. Like, he ain't gonna get loaded down with 50 voicemails a day.
Same thing that Matt said. I think it was episode 74 where we talked about when you went to you were being recruited or tracked over to Keller Williams in New Orleans. Yeah. I was like, here's my entire playbook. Whatever, here it is, man. Yeah. Like, you're not going to do what I do. Yeah. Right? Because you don't want, not that you can't. Yeah. You're not going to want to do it.
Yeah. Yep. And it was so far, and even now, right? Like now we do the podcast going with teams, but the track to get there, the way our team runs compared, like it was still never the same, right? Yeah. Really, what that conversation did was it probably helped Tommy and Teresa, because more importantly, made me look at it and be like, dude, there's some really cool ass people at this office. I'm gonna go over there, right? And then through that, a chance conversation on an assembly line at Mega Relief got me to Herg, and then the podcast, we were all friends. It got Brian and I to partner together, and it's just like all of this stuff that happened. But that's life. Had I not done that, I would have met 3 other people that I would have done some life with, right? Like, instead of 3 people in this room. So it's not like that.
What would that show be like?
Dude, I bet it'd be 2 doppelgangers that look sort of like us, but like not really. Like, you ever seen that Seinfeld episode where she runs into like the fake Jerry and Joe?
That's exactly what it would have been like.
So if you're wanting to increase your business, right? You want to take more listings, want to work with more buyers, you just want to put more money in your bank account, go over to touracademy.com/take10, TEN, sign up for the Take 10 Plus Listings webinar, and then from there, sign up for Tour Academy, and then you'll also want to join us for Tour Academy Masterminds. We do that twice a month. So touracademy.com/take10. Before we finish it up, though, did you see I tagged you guys in earlier this week? Like it was one of those memories that popped up when we were doing it back in the garage. Did you listen to any of that episode?
I 100% did.
Matt, I know Matt did. By the way, Matt brought us in.
Yeah.
I was emceeing
Matt
the
brought
first
us
couple
in,
of episodes,
yeah.
and it was, so today we're going to talk, like it was.
Yeah. It was so
horrible.
buttoned up.
But
Go ahead.
some of the stuff we were talking about on there, I'm like, that was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
We were kind of, that was before even really the automated texting campaigns were.
Yeah.
a thing.
Oh, yeah.
But we were talking about that.
Yep.
So that show was definitely a trendsetter.
Yeah.
Because
I kind of think we started that whole bit.
yeah.
I think we need to start fact checking ourselves, and this is something that maybe I need to add to Danny's plate. Is every Thursday he goes and finds the episode from the week a year ago,
Yeah.
and just does a throwback Thursday, and it's almost like we just somehow fact check ourselves just to be like,
Yeah.
do we have any clue? Because this thing's been in existence now for 2 years.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
We're going to start to get
and
to
there
a
were some large
point.
gaps. You know, there was. I think we went a couple of months one time without doing one when
Yeah.
we first moved, before we moved into the last studio, right? Like,
Yeah.
but we've been consistent now 75 weeks in a row.
Yeah,
75
dude.
weeks.
That's not easy to
and
do.
I was thinking yesterday, I'm like, what should we do? We've got 25 more to go.
Episode 100.
Do you guys want to do something?
Episode 100 is going to be something.
Guys, actually, the 19 people that are still watching this live, because I know we ran long today, what do you guys want to do for our 100th episode? We want to do something
Six, a little bit over 6 months.
something dope.
It's going to be around my birthday.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So we'll have to, can this get up here? Can this go on the road?
Oh, we can figure it out.
Or I can figure
Brian will figure it out.
any of this stuff out.
I mean, we should be allowed to travel again.
I would in 6 months,
It's going to be gone in 6
I'm-
months.
I'm traveling.
I'm
next
quitting
week.
life if we can't travel in 6 months. There's no point in doing this
These guys
anymore.
don't know this, but we should tell our viewers. We got to do our show next Tuesday or something, because
Ooh.
I'm hopping in a car Wednesday morning and driving to southern Colorado, and ain't nobody can hear from me for 5 days.
Yeah. So we'll do it
style.
Tuesday.
Oh, solo. I was like, where's my invite?
No, dude, straight solo.
Can I join?
No,
Can we all join?
no. This is straight up.
Can
Matt
we-
is going to put some freaking cement under the tires and just go somewhere.
What if we just
I
follow
like it.
behind you in our own cars?
That's fine. You guys do that.
Just tail them.
We can do Tuesday.
Patrice is right. We should do a party.
We'll
should
definitely do a party.
We've been talking about, before COVID, we were talking about, going and doing some live shows on the road,
Yeah.
right? Doing the roadies, and opening up to maybe some quarterly masterminds and
Yep.
stuff like that. So, as things open back up, we can start to look at that. Next Tuesday is my son's 4th birthday, so we can do it on that day.
Yeah, next
There you go.
Don't worry about
We'll
it.
get him on here.
We'll get Asher
He's
on.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Might start having kids running around in the background of these things because school's starting, but they ain't taking them, so they don't really know what to do.
Yeah. So again, as you're still listening to this, go over to touracademy.com/take10. Sign up for the webinar. You'll be taking 10 plus listings every single month before you know it, as well as go over and leave us a review on iTunes. And
Lady, take us out. Sorry, Derek.
Hey, thanks for checking out another episode. If you wouldn't mind, go and join our Facebook group, the only real estate group worth being a part of. If you're watching on YouTube, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and give us a review on iTunes. It helps us get our content out to more awesome real estate professionals like you. And last but not least, if you are on Call of Duty, my gamer tag is Brian the Force. I'll see you there.